As someone who grew up with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, it was my very first exposure to the wonderful and fascinating world of Marvel heroes and their terrifying nemeses. Over the years, Spider-Man has faced many opponents, small and large, but out of all of them, Rhino has truly lived up to his name of the most fearsome villain of all. His brute strength and his complex yet heart-wrenching backstory definitely catapulted Rhino to the top of the list when it comes to discussing Spider-Man's most memorable and formidable foes. It was clear that despite the unimpressive screen adaptation, Rhino had a lot of fans. But how well do you know this particular villain? Join us as we unearth all the important details of Rhino's legacy that, as die-hard Rhino fans, you should know. So grab a drink and get cozy and let's get into it. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, let's begin. Who is Rhino? Now, I'm sure you guys know that Rhino's real name is Alexei Sitsevich, and he was a low-level Russian thug. Standing at a height of 6'5" and weighing over 710 pounds, he was the most intimidating Russian anyone could meet. So of course, he worked as an enforcer for criminal organizations. So how did this low-level Russian thug end up becoming one of the most formidable Spider-Man foes? Sure, Mike Conroy calls him the dimmest villain of Spider-Man, but that doesn't take away from his superior build, his humongous figure, intimidating persona, and his ability to charge headfirst into anything, from walls to heroes. And that's what makes him so scary and entertaining. So that brings up the age-old question. How did Rhino get his super strength? Now, to understand that, we have to look a little into his backstory and how he came to be the Rhino. He came from a poor family, and he was not the smartest tool in the box. So as you can guess, he did not have a proper standard of education, and he was not skilled in other stuff either. The only thing he had going for him was his brutish body, which was capable of doing hard labor. However, Alexei wanted easy money. So what do you do when you want quick money with no brains and all brawn? You become the enforcer of the criminal organizations, of course. So sure enough, Alexei became a criminal muscle guy. Despite this line of work, his desperation for money was pretty evident, and by abusing that weakness against him, some Eastern Bloc agents managed to get Alexei to agree to an incredible experiment. Since the payment was pretty huge, Alexei didn't think twice before signing away his body. For the next few months, he underwent life-threatening radiation and chemical treatment. Finally, after so many months of what I assume was torture, we got a new Alexei, complete with super strength, speed, and bulletproof polymer literally bonded to his skin. This polymer suit was designed by two scientists, Georgie and Igor. They designed it to resemble a rhinoceros, not just because of the visual impact, but also because the rhinoceros is the ultimate form of armored assault after years and years of evolution. With this augmentation, Rhino got intensive sub-hypnotic training in American English, and received falsified papers with the name Alex O'Hearn. Armed with those, he was sent to kidnap J. Jonah Jameson's son, Colonel John Jameson. However, on his way to America, he got drunk off his powers and decided to go rogue. He became a solo agent and attacked Jameson, and this was the incident that set off his long-term rivalry against our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Spidey was only able to defeat Rhino by using a specialized web fluid that dissolved Rhino's suit, but that didn't stop the villain from getting an upgrade and making a comeback. Over the years, Rhino has gone through his own ups and downs. He even quit his life of villainy and gave himself up to the authorities. However, escaping the suit and its legacy turned out to be a more complicated affair than he'd initially thought. Every time Rhino settled down, something or the other happened, and off he went, rampaging around in his suit. While his backstory as a Russian immigrant remained the same, each new writer gave him their own unique flair, which included changing up his speech pattern, his accent, and his use of lingo over the years. Despite all those minor changes, Rhino remains a beloved hero for Spider-Man fans because of his character arc, adventures, and powers. Now, this was the suit he had on when he faced off against Spider-Man the first time around. Spider-Man easily outsmarted him, and Rhino was sent to the correctional hospital, where he was kept under heavy sedation. When Rhino broke out after a few weeks, Spider-Man was already prepared for him with special web fluid, thanks to Dr. Kirk Connors. Because of these webs, Rhino's special suit was destroyed and he was imprisoned without any issues. When he was released, the spies who changed him showed up and offered him a new acid-resistant suit. On top of this, they offered Rhino gamma radiation treatment, suggesting that it would definitely strengthen him. Of course, Rhino accepted, and this radiation treatment added more and more cells into his body, increasing his mass by several hundred pounds. His bones were denser, his muscles were stronger, and as you can guess, Alexei was stronger than ever. However, this radiation treatment would sometimes wear off, turning Alexei weaker, both physically and mentally. I suppose this is the reason why Alexei often went back for more and more gamma goodness. Down the line, Rhino also got some mutagenetic treatments. So technically, Alexei is a mutate and not a mutant. In this half-man, half-rhino status, his body remained in peak physical condition, making him a bigger threat than he already was. History of Rhino's suits. Let's be real, Rhino is not complete without his suit, so of course we're going to discuss those in depth. In Earth 616, the first time we see him is in the 41st issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. Here, we see him in the thick polymer matte suit that I have described before. But guess what? Even though this suit was crude in design, it was pretty epic. It could withstand high temperatures and extreme damage with ease, which explains why Rhino got so high and mighty once he defected. On top of that, this suit had 2 horns on top of it, which looked a lot like real horns, but could easily penetrate 2-inch armor plating. But as this design was rather crude, Peter was able to get rid of this suit with his acid webs. After that, Rhino got his acid-resistant suit, which too was eventually destroyed. This is when Rhino got his new but removable suit from Justin Hammer. Mr. Hammer here made sure Rhino went through extensive gamma-ray treatments and adjusted his new suit to enhance his already growing powers. Since Rhino has been affiliated with many, and I mean many villains throughout his run, he ended up working with Jackal, who yet again upgraded his armor. Jackal gave Rhino this super sleek black armor, which he used to free Lizard and Electro from the Andrew Correctional Facility. The black armor has to be one of the most aesthetically pleasing Rhino armors of the lot. While Earth 616 Rhino got 3 to 4 armor upgrades, the list is far from over. Yes, people, we're talking about his alternate reality versions. So first up, we have Earth 120703. This one is well known to all of you. Yes, this is the armor we saw in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Paul Giamatti played Alexei Sistovich. This armor is the ultimate mecha Rhino suit, and you cannot change my mind. Developed by Oscorp and decked out with missile launchers and heavy machine guns, this removable armor is a beast to go up against. Luckily, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man has a manhole cover, which is enough to bash it in. On Earth 26496, Big Man used Alex O'Hearn as a guinea pig for his super illegal Oscorp experiments. Here, Alex's body was fused with Dr. Otto Octavius, and that resulted in him getting a titanium resin armor modeled after a rhinoceros, which was absolutely indestructible. The coloring and the design led to Alex choosing the moniker The Rhino, and this is how the Rhino in Spectacular Spider-Man came to be. However, this armor was not without its flaws. I assume because of the materials used. This armor completely blocked off Rhino's pores, making it impossible for him to regulate his body temperature and hydration levels the way we do. It was like the suit was cooking him from the inside. So every now and then, the Rhino would have to stop in his tracks and have a drink to ensure he did not become delirious from dehydration. Out of all the armors in our list, the crudest one has to belong to the Rhino of Earth 18136. This armor only covered his arms, shoulders, and back. The armor around his hands looked like gauntlets, and Rhino used it to punch stuff without hurting himself. Then in Earth 1610, we have an unnamed man who became the Rhino. The Rhino armor was a cybernetic suit with hydraulic suspension. If you're familiar with the Ultimate Spider-Man lore, then you probably know that the hydraulic suspension IA technology used in the Rhino suit was developed by none other than the US Army. Somehow, this man managed to get his hands on this tech and became the supervillain we know as the Rhino. When it comes to the Rhino in Earth 12041, things were a bit different. You see, he was the half-Rhino, half-man version that I was talking about while discussing his strength. Because of gene splicing and DNA mixing, he had his own armored skin, horns, and enhanced strength. That's why he didn't need traditional armor at first. However, later Rhino accepted Dr. Octopus' technologically advanced armor during the second formation of the Sinister Six. Spidey's description of Rhino's armor having an armor of its own is pretty accurate. This advanced armor was like a tank, having a single track that ran continuously to boost Rhino's charge attack. On top of that, the horn of his suit had a blade attached to it, making his charge attacks more lethal. Lastly, we have Earth 1048's version of the Rhino. This Rhino struggles with a moral dilemma regarding his suit. While having so much power was great, he couldn't take it off, and he was getting bullied for it. So off he went to Dr. Octopus, who decided to free Rhino in a matter of days, much to the chagrin of a certain government agency who had spent years trying.
To stuff my stocking.
Rhino's key clashes with Spider-Man. The first time we saw Rhino in action, he went up against our dear old Spidey. He was to kidnap Jameson's son, but Spidey managed to outwit him, leading to his inevitable defeat. This led to this long, drawn-out war between the two, with Rhino showing up every now and again, hoping to defeat Spidey, only to get his ass handed to him. Despite his strong feelings for the Wallcrawler, Rhino never let them interfere with his work. Even Punisher commented that Rhino actually has a good heart. I think the most satisfying story of Rhino has to be the one titled Flowers for Rhino. Here, Rhino decided that he wanted to take the help of science to improve his mind. Surprisingly enough, he managed to increase his intelligence with an experimental treatment, and he was able to defeat Spider-Man with ease. Then, to take it up a notch, he filed a lawsuit against Spider-Man and got a restraining order against the hero, preventing him from venturing within 500 yards of the villain. But now Rhino's intelligence kept on increasing, and he started getting bored with a lack of intellectual company. He rewrote Hamlet, deduced Spider-Man's identity with one question, and eventually started contemplating suicide because he was so close to omniscience. This led to him reversing the whole procedure, choosing to be just a little dumb, just to be safe. If you've not read this arc, I highly suggest you check it out.
You like being hunted free?
Would you please look who's talking?
Rhino as a team player. Rhino's colorful list of affiliations include, but are not limited to, the Sinister Six, the Sinister Syndicate, the Defenders, the Leader, the AIM, the Secret Defenders, the Exterminators, Doom's Brigade, and even Orcus. Exploring all of these affiliations would be a video of its own, but let me give you a brief overview of his work with some of the organizations. Starting off strong, we have the Sinister Six. This was the first ever villain group created against Spider-Man. Now, in the Ends of the Earth arc, Dr. Octopus, the mastermind behind this criminal organization, decides to create a new version of this group. Originally, the group had Vulture, Electro, Mysterio, Sandman, and Kraven the Hunter. But this time, Dr. Octopus's new group included Chameleon, Mysterio, Electro, Sandman, and our boy Rhino. While Chameleon posed as Steve Rogers, the rest were supposed to slip the Macro Octobot army into this military base and make everything go kaboom. Spider-Man, Sable, and Black Widow were working together to destroy the bases of Dr. Octopus. When the base started to flood, Rhino showed up as their primary adversary. He managed to trap Sable in the drowning building, forcing Spider-Man to choose between Sable and Doc Ock. Sable sacrificed her life and remained in the flooding building, while Spidey went to save everyone's life. Rhino played a prevalent role as the brawn of the Sinister Six in its 10th and 19th incarnations, respectively. There was also the Sinister Syndicate. This was first introduced in the 280th issue of Amazing Spider-Man, and Rhino was part of the original roster. This group was created by Abner Jenkins, also known as the Beetle, and with him, he had Rhino, Boomerang, Speed Demon, and Hydro Man. While the Sinister Six wanted to destroy Spider-Man for good, the Sinister Syndicate were like hired mercenaries. In 1991, we got a 4-issue miniseries where the breakup of the Sinister Syndicate was chronicled. The fallout came from Beetle's jealousy toward Boomerang, who had been trying to get the leadership away from the former for a while. Rhino, in this miniseries, wanted to get rid of his body armor and got in touch with a scientist who could do that. But Beetle killed the scientist as he owed a bunch of money to Kingpin, ruining his chances of getting the permanently bonded armor off of him. This ended up being a point of tension, and when push came to shove, Rhino abandoned his team leader and escaped with Boomerang and his then girlfriend Leela Davis. I'm sure you guys are wondering how Rhino ended up affiliated with Orcus, the main antagonist of the House of X series. Well, as it turns out, he first joined Wilson Fisk's Thunderbolts. While he was all up for their plan against Spider-Man, when he heard they wanted to target Purple Man's children, he felt like this was too much and decided to leave the team. Then, while he was working solo, he came across the anti-mutant organization Orcus and decided to work with them, hoping to capture Nightcrawler. I don't know about you guys, but I was really not expecting to see Rhino in my X-Men comics. He also ended up being a part of the Savage Six thanks to Taskmaster and Black Ant. For those who don't know, at one point Kraven the Hunter wanted to punish animal-themed villains because he felt they disgraced the animal kingdom. Rhino was one of the 6 villains who Kraven kidnapped and sold to rich patrons. Spider-Man got wind of Kraven's plans and interfered with it, saving the villains. Once free, the group took the name Savage Six for good and decided to stick together. One of their most notable achievements as a group has to be the time they went down to Hollywood and tried to shut down Mysterio's film because it painted them in a less than ideal light. While they were unsuccessful because of the lead actress, Mary Jane, and the superheroes working in security, I would have to give Rhino and the other members props. While these are more of his group endeavors, I have to admit, I rather enjoyed seeing Rhino randomly popping up where I never expected him to be. Like that one time he showed up in front of Deadpool, or the time he decided to ruin Bruce Banner's wedding. Why was Rhino even invited to the Hulk's wedding? Great question. Let me explain. Rhino's connection to the Hulk. So remember the time I told you that Rhino got his first dose of gamma radiation after Spider-Man ruined his suit with acid pellets? Well, right after that, once he was fixed, he was sent to capture Dr. Robert Bruce Banner, since he's an authority in gamma ray experimentation. The spies originally wanted to coerce Bruce into joining them and creating gamma ray assassins for them. But when Rhino tried to abduct him, Banner turned into the Hulk and defeated him with ease. Banner left Rhino for dead, but actually Rhino was alive. That's when the leader swooped in and took Rhino under his ring. Now, the leader is the number 1 enemy of the Hulk, and he tried to give Rhino enough radiation to overpower the former. When Leader hears that Betty and Banner are about to get married, he sends Rhino to crash their wedding, creating a huge ruckus. Amidst the chaos, the leader tried to shoot Hulk with a gamma radiation blast, only to hit Rhino, which made him turn against the leader. Despite him trying to kill the leader, the latter helped Rhino yet again and prepared him to fight Hulk. But this time, the leader's mind was in Rhino's body, controlling every move. The battle was brutal, and eventually they crash landed on Earth. Rhino came out of the wreckage and came across boss Abomination, who had been stuck in the desert since his last fight with Hulk, so they both teamed up and decided to fight against the Green Goliath. They charged at Hulk from opposite directions, and in a comical conclusion, Hulk simply got out of the way, leading to these two butting heads and getting knocked out cold. Rhino's love life. As surprising as it may be, Rhino actually tried to straighten himself up. He wanted to leave his life of crime, and that's when he met this pretty waitress named Oksana. Although at first she was mean to him, later he noticed her crying and decided to have a chat with her. Turns out Oksana was fired for being mean to customers. Instead of being snarky, Rhino offered to take her out for dinner, and their love blossomed. Eventually they married and started living in a small apartment. However, the peace and tranquility of their home were suddenly disturbed when a new Rhino showed up out of nowhere. We find out that on the day that Alexei and Oksana went out for dinner, Dr. Trama approached him, offering to reinvent him and turn him into a new Rhino. Alexei refused that offer, so he recruited a successor and turned him into the improved Rhino. Now, this new Rhino was stubborn and prideful. He wanted to prove that he was the best and decided to challenge Alexei. Spider-Man came to help Alexei maintain his new life and defeat the new Rhino, who came back again. But this time, in his chaotic attack, he ended up murdering Oksana. This pushed Alexei enough to don the suit again and become Rhino. The two Rhinos fought, and as you can guess, Alexei came out victorious. Even though his successor begged for mercy, Alexei had none left to give. After this horrible ordeal, Alexei showed up as part of the Sinister Six and trapped Sable in the underwater base of Doc Ock. Even though everyone assumed Alexei died in the flooding, he actually survived. He remained in hiding in Guatemala, and eventually Jackal approached him. Jackal promised that if Alexei joined his ranks, he would be able to resurrect his wife. Jackal created a clone of Oksana, and Rhino happily worked for New U Technologies as long as it meant he could spend time with her. Sadly, due to some unforeseen circumstances, an audio frequency was released which disintegrated all of the New U clones, including Oksana. Seeing Oksana die in front of his eyes one more time, Rhino went on a rampage. This time, instead of defeating him, Spider-Man tried to calm him down. He told Alexei to honor Oksana's death and continue being the person that she would have wanted him to be. Spider-Man told him to keep his head down and keep moving forward, just like a Rhino would. "I'm not crying, you're crying! Who knew Rhino would end up moving me to tears?" Who is Tanya? While we never saw baby Rhinos on screen, we do get to see someone related to Rhino later. Tanya is Oksana's niece, and at one point she gets kidnapped by the Snatcher. Rhino then asked Miles Morales and Captain America for help. Together they got the young girl away from Snatcher and his mind control and returned her to her family. Sometime later, Miles and Alexei worked together and apprehended Snatcher because Alexei refused to let him get away with hurting young kids, especially Tanya. Rhino's role in animated series and video games. The on-screen adaptation of Rhino has been rather unimpressive, right? But wherever movies have failed, the animated series have succeeded, and in Rhino's case, this isn't much different. Voiced by Ed McNamara, Rhino first showed up in the 1960s animated TV show Spider-Man. He was there for 3 episodes, each time creating some jarring problems for our dear Spidey. While you may not have seen the 60s show, I'm sure you've seen Spider-Man the animated series, where Rhino was voiced by Don Stark, and showed up as a hired goon of Kingpin and Alistair Smythe. The next time Rhino showed up on screen, he was trying to steal lithium-ion rods from a power plant. This time, Spider-Man and Rhino faced off, and because Spidey was under the influence of a symbiote, he was far more aggressive, and almost killed Rhino for good. Eventually, he snapped out of the murderous haze and let Rhino go. He's also shown up in Spectacular Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, and Marvel Spider-Man. Each animated show charged up his origin story and suit a bit, as I've discussed before, but let's be real. Clancy Brown, Daryl Sabara, and Matthew Mercer went all out in their voice acting for each of these shows. If you're one of those people who prefers playing video games over watching animated series, no worries. You have plenty of games with Rhino to choose from. In Spider-Man and Captain America and Dr. Doom's Revenge, Rhino is one of the main villains under Dr. Doom's command. Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge gives us a harrowing plot where Rhino and Carnage work together to defeat Spider-Man in a boss battle. Rhino also drops by for a cameo in The Incredible Hulk, where he acts as the second stage boss under Leader's guidance. Rhino also shows up in Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, and Ultimate Spider-Man. In the Ultimate Spider-Man, we get to see Rhino speaking Latin, which definitely adds a new edge to his character that I was not expecting at all. Rhino in the MCU. If we're talking about Rhino, we have to talk about Paul Giamatti's cameo in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This version of the Rhino is very reminiscent of the Ultimate version of the character, since there he was said to have high-tech armor that he controlled from a pilot's seat. While in the Ultimate version, we didn't know much about the pilot, this movie version confirmed that Paul's Rhino is Alexei Sistovich, who was given the robotic suit by Harry Osborn. Other versions of Rhino in the multiverse. In the Ultimate Universe, known as Earth 1610, we saw Rhino steal a suit from the US military. Using this suit and its incredible strength, he robbed a Manhattan bank, and it was extremely hard to apprehend him. Spider-Man and Iron Man both worked together to stop Rhino's rampage. Eventually, the US Army confronted him, hoping to get the suit back. While Rhino argued with the Army, Spider-Man managed to sneak up behind him and ripped his armor open, allowing the military to take him into custody. While on Earth 1610, he had a somewhat successful record committing crimes and wreaking havoc everywhere. On Earth 2149, he was one of the super beings who tried to devour Galactus. Eventually, Zombie Hulk tore off Rhino's head and ate it, commenting on its terrible taste. Did you know that Spider-Man was considered to be a popular mutant in Earth 58163? On this Earth, Rhino was Spidey's bodyguard. And eventually, he was the one who uncovered the identity of the Green Goblin, who was none other than a delusional Peter. One of my favorite alternate reality stories has to be MC2, where Peter rushes to the hospital after his daughter, May, comes down with fever. Once there, they met with Alexi. He told Peter about his family background and that he is his aunt in the USA. However, she has become sick, and he doesn't have a job to pay for her medical expenses. So of course, Peter decided to pull through and help Sistovich find a job, keeping him off the streets. In Earth 295, Rhino acted as one of Death's soldiers. He fought with Magneto and the X-Men. Eventually, he was defeated at the hands of Rogue and was most likely killed in the explosion caused by Sunfire. Lastly, we have Earth 9939, where Rhino is a hero. He's part of the Avengers and calls She-Hulk his wife. Sadly, in this continuity, his sweet married life comes to an abrupt end when Charnel kills She-Hulk, and Alexi dies while avenging her. Marvelous verdict. Rhino's legacy is as great as his strength. Alexei Sistovich is a truly exceptional character, offering us far more than just muscle. We hope our video did justice to this incredibly well-loved villain, and gave you guys a new lens to look at him through. Let us know in the comments which fun fact about Rhino you like the most, and I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget, always be like Rhino. Keep your head down and keep charging forward. Bye! And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.